Welcome to another episode of the Waters Run Deep podcast. One of your hosts, Chris, joined with Amanda, Angela, and Adam. And we're going to be talking about HH Holmes. Amanda's going to kick it off and tell us a little short bit about our topic, and then go from there.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk about one of America's first serial killers, Herman Webster Midget, who better known as Dr. Henry Howard Holmes or HH Holmes. And so I'm really excited to talk about him and kind of what his story is and the, facts and the fuss and all of that. We're also going to talk about the Chicago World Fair a little bit with our local Chicago expert, my wonderful husband, Adam, who's going to share. They can't see you when you do that, but we can. So who's going to share some information. Fun fact, Adam won a prize for information about the Chicago World's Fair at the time. It was called the Chicago Columbian Exhibit or something. Yeah. World's Columbian Expo. So super excited about this topic. It's going to be really interesting. Don't want to say fun because people died, but interesting. And then I have a little conspiracy theory at the end that we're going to throw in there. So off to Ange to share us some Wacky World news.
All right. So this one is actually from today that I had sent to Amanda, just scrolling through the interwebs. So the article is a 2,000-year-old object found at Roman Fort in Northumberland in 1992 has been reassessed by archaeologists. Let me just see if I can share this because I feel like everyone needs to see this before I continue reading on what it is.
That's a dildo. That's a dildo right there.
Yeah.
And we will share this to the Instagram about this beautiful picture.
So what's this phallus made out of?
Yes. So it is apparently, after reassessing, the only known life-size Roman dildo, which was found in a ditch.
Somebody ditched that dick.
It looks like it's made of wood, which then makes me think about the splinters.
But did you see how smooth it was?
I saw how ribbed it was. It's definitely ribbed.
I can still see it.
A lot of lacquer on that thing.
So the article continues to say, that if it was not used as a sexual implement, then it may have been a feature from a statue that people touch for good luck.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that before.
Yeah, that's the old. That's not a rubber dick trick.
When in Rome.
Yeah.
But
wow.
I mean, I guess if you put a lot of olive oil on it for lubrication, it probably isn't too bad.
Extra virgin olive oil?
I'm concerned about the shape. That's doing some serious damage the way that thing works.
Well, the article continues to say that while it is 16 centimeters long right now, they think it was probably larger because it is made of wood. So through the years, it might have been exposed to shrinkage.
That happens.
Like George Costanza. Yeah.
Damn. But still, the cone shape.
Can you imagine being the archaeologist that found this?
Oh, I'd love that.
I'm so sorry.
I'd say, hey, look at this dick I found.
You try to explain it to museums. You can't even sell it to a museum, right? Because you're like, would it be part of the sexual experiences of the Roman? I guess you could sell it to the sex museum.
I was going to say, you could do it in the sex museum, right?
Yeah.
I don't think they buy secondhand toys.
Secondhand toys.
or it could be a torture device, because there is speculation of a theory that it might have been used as a torture device and not as a sex toy.
So I think I mentioned this before. When I was in Spain, And we went to the torture museum. There were lots of things people were putting up people or in people. So,
That I'd definitely go with that, considering the splinters and the shape of it, because the way it's like conical shaped, I feel like it's like you better talk or I'm going to shove it in further, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, but why would the front have like a perfect little head?
That way,
perfect little mushroom.
That way, it finds the spot right. I guess I don't know.
This is definitely not a Jewish dildo.
All right. So besides that one, there are other two theories that it was used as a pestle in a mortar and pestle. And
sure. That's what I tell my mom things are for. Yeah.
And the third option is that it was meant to slot into a statue, which we already talked about for good luck, where they rub it for good luck.
They like rub the statue's penis for good luck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
That's hilarious.
You know, instead of a Buddha belly rubbing for good luck, you just
rub a Roman guy's
quite
dick.
Small though, right? Like
now it is. Yes.
16 centimeters. So that's only like, how big is that? Adam, come in here so I can verify what 16 centimeters looks like.
I'm a grower, not a shower.
It's 6.2 inches. 6.2 or 6.3 inches.
That's average. That's
okay.
average.
That's not bad.
Yeah. Hold on.
That's average.
Here. About that?
I mean, all right.
Yeah. That's average.
That doesn't seem too bad.
That's nothing to, write home about, but it's definitely,
It's a little bit above average, right?
I think 6 is average.
I think some men would love to have that size. Our listeners,
y'all just have rulers right next to the desk for.
Right. Apparently, Adam and I are missing out in their ruler thing because I don't think we even have a ruler in this house.
I'm sorry, I'm at my work desk, so I have everything.
Adam, do we have a ruler?
You are the ruler.
Well, I mean, we have a queen, but I don't think we have a
same thing
space ruler.
We know who rules the household. It's Summer.
I have a ruler and nipple clips.
Oh.
You're into that?
We got those too, don't you worry. Well, I mean, good for the Romans.
Hey, yeah, it all starts somewhere, right?
We all know they were very sexual.
Yeah.
And, I think it shows that kinkiness is not a new thing.
No?
Yeah, don't kink shame them.
No.
Never.
All right, well, let's start talking about
real quick, we want to remind our listeners to rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. I'll probably mention it again, but it can't be said enough. It's really important. Doesn't take much to go on there and hit us a review. It helps us out a lot. We also have listener support added to our Spotify now. So if you love us and you want to show us, there's a way to do it. Also for that, the same goes for that. Be glad to send some stickers, whoever decides to like us, review us, and also support us. So please, can't ask enough. Give us some likes, give us some reviews. Thank you.
Yeah, follow us on our Instagram. We have made it a little bit more active now that I've learned how to do things on it. So, super exciting.
And now I have stickers too. So, I'm going to go around tagging stuff.
Love it.
Yes.
I'm not going to lie. Usually, I'm the one that's listening. So, I usually also do Instagram stuff while we're talking about the episode. And I'm like, shit, I'm the one presenting this week. So I'll have to add our Instagram stuff after I present.
I'll make note of it. Don't worry.
Yeah, remind me because we know I'll forget. So, cool. All right, friends. Well, let's get to talking about one of America's first serial killers, HH Holmes. So H.H. Holmes was an American con artist and serial killer, and he was a subject to more than 50 lawsuits in Chicago alone. That doesn't include other places he lived, like Texas, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Denver. This man got around. Until his execution in 1896, he chose a career of crime, including lots of insurance fraud. He knew how to fraud the insurance people, swindling, check forging, and then he also really enjoyed getting married, but not getting divorced. So we'll talk a little bit about that.
Wait. Because I am reading the book.
Yeah.
The Devil in White City. And I just read that part today about him promising one of the ladies that he would get married, and that never came true.
Yep. He likes that promise a lot. So
took out life insurance policies on him and then collected.
Yeah.
Yep.
In smart ways. So we're also going to, like I said before, chat about the Chicago World Columbian Exposition. Is that what it was, Adam? And then why this was a perfect place for Holmes to collect his victims, we'll say. And then also our final kind of conversation is we are going to chat if there is a theory out there if HH Holmes and Jack the Ripper are the same people. So I'm going to share my case and hear what you guys have to say. All right, let's get started. So Holmes was born Herman Webster Mudgett in Gilmanton, New Hampshire in 1861. Sorry. He was born to Levi and Theodette Mudgett. I like that name, Theodette. Who were both like immigrants from England, doing their thing. He had an older sister, an older brother, and a younger sister, and a younger brother. His dad was a farmer. And, for all sense of things, he actually had a really pretty normal childhood. Although some people try to find ways to get him to fit into like the patterns of modern serial killers, such as torturing animals or having like an abusive parent. He didn't have any of that. He was just like pretty normal childhood, middle kid of 6 or 5. Sorry. So, living the cool life. I also want to say I got my research from it's like crime serial killers something. I watched a documentary about H.H. Holmes, which was terrible, on Hulu. I did read Devil in the White City, but I do think that actually is a lot more fiction than truth based on other things I've read. And then there's an interesting website too, and I can post all that in our thing. So, okay. At 16, Holmes married Clara Lovering, and they had one son named Robert. And around this time, he enrolled in the University of Vermont, but was unsatisfied with the school and left after 1 year. 2 years later, he tried his hand again at university life and enrolled in the University of Michigan's Department of Medicine and Surgery and graduated in June 1884 after passing his exams. So he has a degree in medical surgery, all of that. So keep that in mind as we talk about like his victims and the crimes and stuff he committed, is like he knew a lot about medicine. During this time, while he was enrolled, he worked in an anatomy lab and is said to have engaged in facilitating grave robbing to supply medical cadavers with different people, particularly the head of the anatomy lab. So he learned how to do all of that from a very young age, and he learned that through grave robbing, you were able to kind of, pick up bodies, and then you could like use them for insurance fraud, all of that stuff. Years later, sorry.
No, I just wanted to add, during that time, wasn't that like a big, huge thing? Everyone was getting into medicine, so there weren't enough bodies for them to actually perform autopsies and teach the students. So that's an important factor.
Oddfellows came from.
Make note of. Yeah.
The what?
The Oddfellows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and grave robbing was huge at this time. So remember that there was like people would ring a bell in case they were buried and they weren't dead, and like it was sometimes a profession to be a grave robber, right? That's how you made money. It was really big at this time to be a grave robber, and a lot of that was you were robbing like people who were buried with wealth. So you were trying to get their diamonds or whatever, or you were trying to get the cadavers to sell body parts, things like that. Years later, when Holmes was suspected of murder, he claimed it to be nothing but an insurance frauder and said he just used the cadavers to defraud the insurance companies. So, kind of interesting. Adam, you want to add anything there, or are we still good?
Yeah, he would dissect the bodies and sell the skeletons to medical areas and let people study it. He'd also use that on his victims. He would take them apart and sell their parts to places for money. And textbook serial killer.
So during this time, housemaids would describe Holmes as treating Clara violently. And before his graduation, she actually moved back to New Hampshire and later wrote that she knew little of him afterwards. So it seems like they kind of were only married for like 2-ish, 3-ish years. And she was like, this guy's crazy, and moved back. He moved on to New York, where he was seen with a little boy who eventually disappeared. He claimed that the boy went back to Massachusetts, but no investigation was ever took place, and then Holmes quickly left town after being asked. And it's believed this may have been one of Holmes' first murders. Later that year, he moved to Philadelphia and got a job at a drugstore there. While he was working there, another boy died after taking medicine that was purchased from the drugstore. Holmes denied any involvement in the death of the child, but immediately left the city. And right before he did, he changed his name to Henry Howard Holmes with the possibility to avoid being exposed for his previous crimes. So, yeah. So it didn't just start in Chicago. He definitely was doing some shady shit before. In 1886, while still married to Clara, Holmes married Myretta Belknap. He did file for divorce from Clara after a few weeks of marrying Myretta. So he already married Myretta, but then he was like, oh shit, Clara. So he filed for divorce from her. But the claim was never proven. It never went anywhere. Oh, and his claimant for divorce on Clara was infidelity on Clara's part. Although he was already married. So he cry. The paperwork never really went anywhere, and it's believed that she actually never even was served the divorce papers. So in any case, the divorce was never finalized. It was dismissed in 1891. And then thus Holmes becomes a bigamist. So he's now married to 2 women. I want you to keep track of how many women Holmes
bigamist or polygamist?
Bigamist, because it's only 2.
Okay.
Yes. So Holmes and Myretta arrive in Chicago in August 1886, which is when he starts to use the name HH Holmes. He does have a child with Myretta. I don't have her name. I don't remember what it was. It was Lily or something. And we really don't hear much about Myretta after that. So my assume is she probably did the same thing that Clara did and was like, peace the fuck out to this crazy bat. At the time they were in Chicago, he came across a drugstore called the Holton's Drugstore, where he got a job, and he proved to be a hardworking employee. He actually even was able to purchase the store from the Holtons. And then he purchased an empty lot across from the drugstore, which is where he began to build a 2-story kind of mixed-use building with apartments on the second floor and retail space on the first floor, including a new drugstore. How many drugstores do people need?
I mean, it was the 1800s, so a lot.
That's true.
They needed to sell their cocaine.
And Walgreens are always across the street from each other.
Yeah.
So.
Their drugstores were different. You could get a mixture of heroin, marijuana, and alcohol all in one.
And that was called a Coca-Cola.
With your mixed spoon.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I forgot about the mixed spoon.
Well, that's why those drinks were invented. They were actually invented as a means to take these drugs more pleasantly. Apparently, they didn't taste very good, which shocker. But these people invented these syrupy, sugary drinks so you could take your super drug elixir better. So you could be walking around fucked up all the time and tasting good.
Ah, the good old days. So in 1892, he did add a third floor to his mixed-use building, telling investors and suppliers that he intended to use it as a hotel with the upcoming World's Columbian Exposition of 1893. Though the hotel portion actually was never completed, it did have 3 stories and a basement, and that ground floor was a storefront. So it kind of worked, but it wasn't really actually a hotel. So the people who actually stayed there were folks he kind of lured in or like knew or met, not just like randomly showed up. So I wanted to take a minute before we talk about the guest in the hotel to have Adam share a little bit about the World's Columbian Expo.
So the World's Columbian Expo, which has since been rebranded to the World's Columbian Fair or the World Fair, it was hosted in Chicago in 1893. It was a way for Chicago to show we're back on the map, because if you all remember your history, 1871 was the Great Chicago Fire, where the majority of Chicago all burned down, and takes a while to rebuild. So this was Chicago's way of going, hey, we're back. We are rebuilt. Let's show the world. Because back then, obviously didn't have the internet. So the newspapers, anyone who hosts the Columbian Expo would be front page news. So the Columbian Expo had the first Ferris wheel ever. It was the first one actually lit by electricity. That's why it's called Devil in the White City, because the city was illuminated by so many light bulbs. They called it the White City for how bright it was, because that was a whole new thing. It blew people's minds to see electricity. I mean, you're talking about farmers and stuff to go there and see all this. It was really a show of power for Chicago to show their back, show they are, an epicenter of the United States, and, try and get people back to visit.
Awesome. Thank you. I can now see why you got A+ on that project. So yeah. I tried and it wouldn't let me because you were recording.
You pointed your face right at the mic. You went like this, like this is gonna stop you. Like
no, I tried to push the mute and it wouldn't. I'm just so gassy.
I think that needs to stay in the recording.
I'm gonna loop them all at the end, and there'll be a remix of Amanda's burps throughout the episode.
And then at the end we'll say, "I'm just so gassy."
Should use that like future recordings and stuff as go back to it, like just so gassy.
I put it on this. I put it on the soundboard. I'll just hit it.
Exactly.
No, it's going to turn into a drinking game. Amanda, that needs to be in as the post. How many times does Amanda burp per episode? Every time she does take a drink.
Ant-Man on Saturday, Adam.
Yep.
And I don't know if you guys have seen, there's a new Fast and Furious movie coming out.
Final one.
I don't even know if it's a final.
Allegedly.
Right. It'll never be the end.
But I said to Adam, I was like, oh man, we should play a drinking game. Every time they say the word family, you have to drink. In the 5 minute, 10, I don't know how long, whatever.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes at most.
They said it how many? 11 times, Adam?
7 times they said family. Just in the trailer.
That's what it's about. Family.
Yeah.
Someone did the math and said that what's the dude's name in Vin Diesel's character? What's his name in it?
Family?
Yeah,
no.
family.
Dom
Toretto. That's right. They ran the math and figured that he is the strongest human being alive, because they in the trailer how easily he lifted one of these. He lifted an engine with his bare hands. They did the math of how heavy the engine is. It's like 7,000 pounds. He lifted like it's nothing. So they ran the math. Like, yeah, he is without a doubt the strongest human being on earth.
Well, he's only like 5'2". He's really short.
Vin Diesel?
Yeah, he's a short man.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He wears like stilts and they project the video in a certain way so it doesn't. Yeah, he's like super short. Listen,
No,
everybody's
they say
keyboards
5'11".
go. No.
They
5'11".
say that.
Yeah.
He's
But
no
is
way he's
he?
5'11".
Maybe he threatened their families if they told the real truth.
He says he's going to sick his family.
It's all about
Sick
family.
his family on their family.
Yeah, but look at him compared to The Rock. There's more than 5 inches.
The Rock is huge. He was a football player. Or
I know, but I'm
almost became a football player.
If you're saying Vin Diesel's 5'11", The Rock's 6'5".
The Rock is 6'5". How tall is Dwayne Johnson? 6'5".
Yeah, but like looking at pictures, he looks almost a foot taller than him.
Let's see.
We're going down the rabbit hole right now.
I would love a Roman artifact found emulating The Rock, if you catch my drift.
Ba-dum-bum. That's a different kind of rock.
Yeah, I don't think Vin Diesel's 5'2". Like, he's definitely taller than you think.
All right, so compared to Jason Statham, who is an inch shorter than Vin Diesel.
Wait, Jason Statham is?
Yes.
So?
I'm just saying for height comparison.
Oh,
does he really look like he's 5'10"?
I mean,
or does he look significantly taller than Vin Diesel?
I mean, with what they can do with cameras nowadays, like look at Elf. The forced perspective, they can make you look as tall or as short as you want. They make Tom Cruise look like a normal sized human being.
That's true, and he's one of those
short.
Nestle elves people. He like builds shoes on a tree.
That's how they make us believe the Earth's not round.
Flat Earth.
That sun.
I mean, the Earth's not flat.
Is not equal or equivalent size of the Earth.
The sun. Yeah.
I think I almost got Robin believing it that the Earth's flat.
No.
So
yeah,
So where do I report that I think you're doing child abuse to your child if you're going to make her believe that?
I don't know. I don't do that. She's not around when I talk about that because I don't want.
You're going to get Robin believing it, and then she's going to go into school and she's going to say, "My daddy says the Earth's flat."
Isn't there an HBO special right now?
There's 2 really good documentaries.
You know which one I'm talking about, Chris? The kid with the curly hair that walks around with the mic?
I think so. I know the ones I know is Level, and I think it's Level 2, and they check those out. They're like really good documentaries on it.
Are these on your like favorite website that you always try to get me to read and I refuse to?
Hibbler, this guy named Hibbler did both of them, but the Eddie Bravo, the MMA. Well, no, I wish I knew him personally.
Oh
but
yeah,
he's a really big
Johnny
flat
Bravo's
earther.
brother.
He's a jiu-jitsu guy and comedian, and he's a really big flat earther. I'm telling you, there's some truth to it. It's worth looking into. I'll say that.
Nope.
I'm not wholeheartedly believe it.
No, there isn't.
Watch those 2 documentaries and then tell me.
So Amanda knows that I like to unwind. My thing is I like to play video games. So my game is Call of Duty, and I play with some people and we get into some spirited discussions. We sometimes talk politics, which I love to do, but we sometimes discuss science and other things. Yes, go figure on this game. So one of the guys I was playing with, he was discussing, because he's big conspiracy theories about a theorist. He's all about how these pharmacies and pharmaceutical companies are lying to us so that we take medicine that we don't need. And they're like, all the stuff about chemical imbalances in your brain is all bullshit. And I'm like, I mean, to an extent, yes, but and I explained my situation about how I, went and sought help for my, no, I did tell him about that. But going back to it, I dealt with my own anxiety and depression through medication, and it helped. It really did help. So we had a good hour-long discussion about this. I'm like, you can't just discount people because you think that. And then he's like, mentioned something about the flat Earth. I'm like, no, when we start discussing whether or not facts are facts, that's when I'm going to walk away in this conversation. He starts to try and really push it. I'm like, dude, no, this was proven thousands of years ago with a very simple experiment that the Earth is in fact round.
So let me ask you this:
equal or greater size to the sun.
So let me ask you this: so given the Pythagorean theorem, right, for the curvature of the Earth, right?
Oh, that's not. That's for the dimensions of a triangle. In a right triangle, the sum of the squares of the lengths of the legs is equal to the square of the length hypotenuse.
Right. Then that should give you the curve, right?
No, that'll give you the triangle. That's not. It's a different theorem that gives you the circumference.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Of the Earth.
I'm sorry. That gives you. That's how they figure. I'm sorry. You're right. That's how they figured out the diameter of the Earth, because they figured out they figured that out to get the diameter.
They came pretty accurate thousands of years ago. Yeah.
Right. So, given that, they were able to figure out the curvature of the Earth, and I can't remember the theorem for that part of it, but they were able to figure out the curvature with that, not but using that data to get the curvature. So, given the curvature, they figured out that it's every mile the Earth curves 8 inches, right? So that means if you're, I don't know, on the ocean and you look out and see a boat that is 10 miles away, you should see 80 inches from where the bottom of the boat is in the water to another point of the boat, whatever's 80 inches above the water, right?
I mean, I guess, but
because it's going over the curve, because it would be on the other side of the curve, right?
Well, by that logic, so if you're in Chicago, yes, throwing a plug for my great city, you can look across the Lake Michigan, and there are certain buildings you can see and certain buildings you can't see because of the curve. If it was flat, you'd be able to see everything clear as day right across. And this is, what about all the other planets? Why is everything else round? It's
we're talking
gravity,
about
gravity as a force pulls everything towards the center, which causes it.
We're getting past Earth. We're still trying to figure out if Earth's still flat. So if I'm standing at that point and you're talking about seeing those cities, if I have like a Nikon P100, I think it's the type of camera that can zoom like crazy far. How come I can zoom in and see all those buildings? And they're able to prove that.
Because you won't see all of them. You may be able to see some of them.
They've proved it.
Go take a trip to Chicago and go
because
try and recreate
Illinois is a flat land.
It's the flattest state in the country.
They've shown it with the camera that zooms, and they're zooming it perpetually, and it zooms right into the buildings, all the buildings. I'm telling you, watch that documentary.
So you're right.
And they proved it hundreds of years ago that it was flat because they did it on the English. I think it's.
They did not prove that it was flat. I assure you. They proved it was round thousands of years ago through a simple.
Well, I'm saying not him, but other people.
They took 2 cities and they had 2 people record the shadows at 2 different cities at the same time in 2 different areas, hundreds of miles apart. Well, in one city, the shadow was far away from buildings. It was going on an angle, and then in another city there was no shadows, and that's because the Earth was curved at the time. It was proven thousands of years ago. It's a very simple.
I wish we were a bigger podcast than we were, because I know I would love, because there's so many counters to everything you're bringing up that these guys would like destroying.
But unfortunately, we're not talking about this topic.
Correct. Let me just throw one fun fact in.
We're done.
One more.
Shut it down.
One more, because you can edit this.
It's not going in, Chris. None of this is going in.
Neil deGrasse Tyson talked about how perfect of a sphere the Earth is.
I'm done. Fuck Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's a fucking shill. I'm done.
A shill. Okay. Anyway, If you were to scale the Earth down to the size of a cue ball, like you would play pool with, it would be smoother than the cue ball. Because of how giant the Earth is, the difference between the highest point and the lowest point, Mount Everest and the Marianas Trench, is about 10 miles difference. If you were to shrink that down over the over what's our diameter, 5,000 miles or something, it would be smoother than the smoothest object we've ever created. Fun fact.
I was on board until you mentioned Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Why facts and science annoy you?
Anyway, back to the. No, I wish I was prepared for flat Earth. Otherwise, he's. Oh, don't even get me started on that dude. But anyway, back to the topic at hand.
So Adam just gave a lovely recap of the world's Columbian Expo.
So some fictionalized accounts report that Holmes constructed the hotel in hopes to lure tourists visiting the nearby World's Expo in order to murder them and then sell their skeletons to medical schools. There is actually no evidence that supports this, especially because Holmes actually knew all of his victims. They were not strangers to him. They were not people that he just randomly met in the street. He knew them all. He did have a history of selling cadavers to medical schools, but many of those he acquired through grave robbing rather than his murders. So, Holmes' building was named Murder Castle, obviously after the murders were found and everything like that. It was claimed to be a structure that contained secret torture chambers, trap doors, gas chambers, and a basement crematorium. But none of this was true. Other accounts claim that the hotel was made up of over 100 rooms and laid out like a maze with doors opening to brick walls, windowless rooms, dead-end staircases. Again, not true. In reality, the hotel floor was moderately sized and largely unremarkable. It did contain some hidden rooms, but they were mostly used for hiding furniture that Holmes bought on credit and had no intention to pay for. The hotel was gutted when a fire started by an unknown person shortly after Holmes was arrested and was rebuilt and used as a post office until 1938. Besides his infamous murder castle, Holmes also owned a one-story factory, which he claimed to use for glass bending. It is unsure if the factory furnace was actually used for glass bending or if it is where Holmes destroyed evidence for his murders.
I mean, it makes sense. He supposedly used the acid baths to dissolve bodies and stuff, but...
So I think that a lot of what we assume about him and what fiction has told us about Holmes is not as truthful. We've made him to be even more of a villain than he really was. He was still a terrible, terrible dude, but we made it a little bit more villainous. So one of Holmes' early victims was his mistress, Julia Smythe. She was the wife of a man who had moved into Holmes's building and began working at his pharmacy at the jewelry counter. After Smythe's husband found out about the affair with Holmes, the husband quit his job and moved away, leaving Smythe and her daughter Pearl behind to live with Holmes. Smythe gained custody of Pearl and remained in the hotel, continuing her relationship with Holmes. I think this is the marriage you were talking about, Angela, that he was saying was going to happen, and it never really did.
Yep.
Julia and Pearl both disappeared on Christmas Eve of 1891, and Holmes later claimed that she died from an illegal abortion, which, despite his medical background, Holmes was probably unlikely to have carried out abortions before, and mortality rates from such procedures were really high at the time. So it was kind of like, oh, okay, that happened. Holmes claimed to have poisoned Pearl to hide the circumstances of her mother's death. A partial skeleton, possibly of Pearl, was found when excavating the cellar of Holmes. And then Pearl's father, Ned, was actually one of the key witnesses in Holmes's trial in Chicago. His next victim was Emmeline Chagrande, who began working in Holmes's building in 1892 and disappeared that December. Rumors again followed her disappearance that she had probably gotten pregnant by Holmes, and then was another victim of a failed abortion. And then there was another young girl who worked for Holmes in his building named Emily Van Tassel, who also vanished, quote unquote. In 1893, a one-time actress named Minnie Williams moved to Chicago, where she apparently met Holmes at an employment office, and there were rumors, and he offered her a job at the hotel as his personal stenographer, which she accepted. Holmes persuaded Williams to transfer the deed of some property in Fort Worth, Texas, to a man named Alexander Bond, which was an alias of Holmes. He had lots of aliases, by the way. So it must have been really easy to make aliases in the 1800s. I don't know.
Yeah, there's no like formal way of identifying yourself. There's not like licenses and things like that. You pretty much took everybody on their word.
All right, so call back to one of our Wacky World news. Do you think he would have forged documents to get back into high school?
Oh, well, if he was allowed to kill people, probably. So in April 1893, Williams transferred the deeds of that property, and within the next month, Holmes and Williams were presenting themselves as to be husband and wife. They rented an apartment in Chicago's Lincoln Park. And Minnie's sister Annie came to visit, where in July she wrote a letter to her aunt saying that she had planned to accompany brother Harry to Europe, but neither Minnie nor Annie were ever seen alive again and after July 5th, 1893. So I assume they probably did not accompany brother Harry to Europe.
That's fun, because I didn't know that. I haven't gotten to that part in the book yet, but I was just at Lincoln Park over the weekend.
Yeah, Lincoln
Went
Park.
to Chicago Pizza and Oven Grinder, which is allegedly part of Al Capone's racket.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Good pizza, or good pot pie pizza.
So although not proven, Holmes was suspected of killing 6 other people who vanished between 1891 and 1895. Dr. Ressler, who had an office in the castle, went missing in 1992. Kitty Kelly, another stenographer for Holmes, went missing in 1892 also. John G. Davis, who was visiting the World's Fair in 1893, vanished. Henry Walker, who went missing in November 1893, was alleged to have insured his life to Holmes for $20,000, wrote to friends that he was working for Holmes in Chicago, and then they never heard from him again. Milford Cole also allegedly disappeared after receiving a telegraph from Holmes to come to Chicago and explore this wonderful city. And an otherwise unknown victim was Lucy Burbank, and they only know that they think she was a victim because her bank book was found in the castle in 1895. So, like I mentioned, there was an arson, and the insurance company was going to prosecute him for the arson. So Holmes left Chicago in July 1894. And he reappeared in Fort Worth, Texas, in the property that he had inherited from the Williams sisters. Once again, he tried to build an incomplete structure without paying his suppliers and contractors. But this building never really went anywhere, and there weren't any killings that happened there. In July 1894, Holmes was arrested and briefly jailed. This was on selling mortgage goods in St. Louis. So he got around. He definitely didn't stay in one place. And he was in St. Louis for a while. While he was there, he met a young attorney named Jebetha Howe. And Howe thought that Holmes and his schemes were like brilliant. And he agreed to be a part of Holmes. I don't think he knew about the murder, but I think he definitely knew about the like insurance swindling and insurance fraud and everything.
He wanted to get up in that cheddar until he found out about the murders.
So Holmes concocted a plan to swindle an insurance company out of $10,000 by taking out a policy on himself and then faking his own death. And he promised a guy that he met in prison $500 of that in exchange for a lawyer he could trust. So that's how he met Hal. Hal really liked that. Nevertheless, his plan actually didn't work because the insurance company became suspicious and refused to pay him, obviously, because he was still alive. He didn't press the claim, but instead he decided to concoct this plan with a friend of his that he had met while he was in Chicago. So while working at a chemical bank in Chicago, Holmes met and became close friends with a man named Benjamin Pietzl, who was a carpenter with a criminal past who was exhibiting in the same building. A coal bin, which was like a coal bin he had invented and he was showing at the exhibit. Holmes used Pietzl as his right-hand man for several criminal schemes, and a district attorney later described Pietzl as Holmes's tool, his creature. Pietzl's a really important part of the HH Holmes story because Holmes really kind of turns on Pietzl and manipulates him in many ways. So one of the first ways is Holmes gets Pietzl to agree to fake his own death so that his wife could collect a $10,000 life insurance policy, which then she was to split with Holmes and Hal, so a three-way split. The scheme was to take place in Philadelphia, and it called for Pietzl to set himself up as an inventor with a new name of B.F. Perry, and then be killed and disfigured in a lab explosion. Holmes was going to find an appropriate cadaver, all the things that to make it seem realistic without Pietzl having to die. However, instead of doing that, Holmes killed Pietzl by knocking him unconscious with chloroform and then setting his body on fire using benzene. In his confession, Holmes actually stated that he implied Pietzl to still be alive when he used the chloroform on him and then set him off on fire. But forensic evidence showed that Holmes actually used the chloroform after he had killed Pietzl. So it was like a double thing, probably to assume to fake suicide so that Holmes could be exonerated for charge of murder.
Wow, that's fascinating. What I don't know how that would assume suicide if he did with the chloroform after.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know. That doesn't add up.
Like the Family Guy quote, and that is why I killed myself, chopped myself up, and threw myself in the garbage.
Yeah.
Well, if it was supposed to be a lab explosion, if he was familiar, like working in a lab, that would explain why a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. I can buy that.
And also, I posted in the chat. So $10,000 to the listeners here. For a conversion to today's dollars in 2023 from 1893, that is $330,000. So when we're talking 10,000, it's actually 300,000 equivalent dollars today. So that was a lot of money back then that he was trying to defraud. So he was not going for, simple dimes and cents. He was going for mansion money.
Wow.
I still think $10,000 is a lot of money. I'll take that any day.
Yeah.
Thank you, Adam. So Holmes did collect that $10,000 insurance payout because the Pietzl's corpse is real. Like, he really did die. He then went on to manipulate Pietzl's unsuspecting wife into allowing 3 of her 5 children, Alice, Nellie, and Howard, to be placed in his custody. I do not know how he went about and said to this woman, look, of your 5 children, 3 of them should live with me.
Yeah, that's a hard sell.
So her eldest daughter and their baby remained with Miss Pietzl, but Holmes and the 3 Pietzl children traveled throughout the northern United States and into Canada. Simultaneously, he did escort Miss Pietzl along a parallel route, so she would sometimes come with them. He would use various aliases and, would make up lies about her husband's death, claiming that, he really didn't die. He's actually hiding in London. And he also would lie to her about, the whereabouts of her children. and be like, oh, they're just down the street, like things like that. Even more audacious is Holmes would stay in like another location with his wife, who was unaware of the whole thing, had no idea about the 3 children, had no idea about everything going on.
Which wife are we on at this point?
This would be.
Is it still Murda or no?
Well, good point, Ange. No. So I actually did not tell you this part, but Holmes married Georgiana Yoke in 1994 in Denver, Colorado. Now he's still married to Clara and Murda, so he is now officially a polygamist. So this must have been Georgiana that was with him. Holmes later.
Georgiana or Georginia?
Georginia. Sorry. Yep. Georginia.
Okay. Sorry.
No, I appreciate that.
Is it Georgina?
No, it's Genia.
Hey, those names were weird back then.
No, I think it's. I don't know. If that's your name, tell us how to say it, and I'll get it correct next time.
Like Edith?
Yeah, like Edith.
Hey.
So Holmes later did confess to murdering Alice and Nellie. And this, I think, is so sick. So he forced them into a large trunk and locked them inside. He then drilled a hole in the lid of the trunk and put one end of a hose through the hole, attached the other end of the hose to a gas line, and asphyxiated the girls. He then buried their nude bodies in a cellar of a rental house he was renting in Toronto. So
it's like my biggest fear.
Well, right. Like that's terrifying.
Sounds awful.
But my other question is like, why were they naked? Like, did other things occur to these girls that we weren't like they didn't test for back then, right?
Probably.
Yeah, it's definitely possible.
I mean, how old were these?
I do not know how old they were, Ange. Let's check.
What were the names again? Alice and what?
Alice and Nellie Pietzel. It looks like Alice was 14 and Nellie was 12.
Okay, so that's not his typical type in a sense.
It definitely is not. He definitely was with her older women. Not older, but like 20s. So it was really young. I don't know. He doesn't really share why he killed them, but I don't know if they just got annoying or what. So there was a police detective in Philadelphia who kind of caught on to what Holmes was doing. And he was like, this guy, there's something up with this guy. So he ended up investigating Holmes and really wanted to find the 3 missing children. So he went to Toronto and he found in the home that the Holmes rented the decomposed bodies of the Pietzel girls. He said in a quote, "The deeper we dug, the more horrible the odor became. And when we reached the depth of 3 feet, we discovered what appeared to be the bone of a forearm of a human being." So Geyer then went to Indianapolis, where Holmes rented a cottage, and was kind of following him there. And Holmes are reported to have visited a local pharmacy where he purchased drugs that they believe was used to kill young Howard Pietzel, and then a repair shop to sharpen his knives, which was used to chop up the body before he burned Howard. The boy's teeth and bits of bones were discovered in the chimney of the cottage that Holmes rented. So not only did he kill the sisters, he then took the boy with him to another place and then killed the boy. And we don't know how much torture happened in between all of this, if it did, but I would assume it did. So Holmes's murder spree finally ended when he was arrested in Boston in 1894. He was held on an outstanding warrant for horse theft in Texas, and authorities had become more suspicious of him, and they were worried that he would flee the country. So they wanted to make sure that he had done that. They arrested him. In July 1895, following the discovery of Alice and Nellie's bodies, Chicago police and reporters began investigating his home in Inglewood, the murder castle. Though many sensational claims were made, no evidence was found that could have convicted Holmes in Chicago. Although there were stories of torture equipment found in the building, etc., that's actually all fiction. So they never found like torture devices in the building, none of that. In October 1895, Holmes was put on trial for the murder of Benjamin Pietzel and was found guilty and sentenced to death. By then, it was evident that Holmes had also murdered the 3 Pietzel children. Following his conviction, Holmes confessed to 27 murders in Chicago, Indianapolis, and Toronto, though some people he confessed to murdering were actually still alive. So that's kind of hard. And then, of course, 6 attempted murders, which didn't happen. He was paid $7,500 by the Hertz newspaper in exchange for his confession, which after they did it, they found out was mostly nonsense. So he actually just lied for the $7,500. But that made me think about, like, why, if you were to be paid $7,500, which is probably a good amount of money now that we know the conversion rate, right? But you're sentenced to death. How are you going to use it? Was he like,
doesn't matter.
Take it out? Doesn't matter, is that what you said?
Yeah. I mean, because look at all the debt he had built up. Like, he wasn't paying it. So, like, what was the whole point of all the insurance fraud and everything else? I mean, if someone's offering to pay him money, why wouldn't you take it?
Yeah, it's never enough, especially for like a lifetime fraudster. That's just his bread and butter. He's like, let's just defraud people and get more money. And $7,500 is $250,000 today.
All right, well, that makes sense.
A lot of cheddar.
So on May 7th, 1896, Holmes was hung at the Philadelphia County Prison for the murder of the Pietzels. Until that moment of his death, Holmes remained calm, amiable, had no signs of fear, anxiety, or depression. He did ask for his coffin to contain cement and be buried 10 feet deep because he was concerned of grave robbers to steal his body and use for medical science. So I guess we're all worried about the crimes we commit.
Pot, kettle, black.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So interesting fact, his neck did not break. Instead, he actually was strangled slowly and twitched for over 15 minutes before being pronounced dead 20 minutes later. Which honestly, I feel
what
like
he deserved.
What a great way. Like, glad you died that way, because I think he should have been put in a trunk, and then a hole and a gas thing. But that's just my thought.
Or just poured cement while he was still alive into this casket that he wanted buried.
Even better.
Yep.
Okay, eye for an eye makes the world blind. Guillotine was 100% effective, quick, straight to the point, and it was visually got the point.
It wasn't
across.
Actually 100% effective though, because sometimes it wasn't as
No one
sharp as
lived
it should have been.
The guillotine, 100%.
But they still didn't cut all the muscles.
Just double check that. As far as I remember, the guillotine was 100% kill rate.
Angela,
because the blade weighs like 500 pounds, even if it's not sharp. The blunt force of that thing falling is going to shatter your entire neck.
Adam, would you like me to check that on you later?
Hey, now we have evidence. That's a joke with Amanda that I have an independent autopsy ready. Should I die? Under mysterious circumstances.
I was going to say, it depends. What's your life insurance look like?
Not with this new job, really good. So, keep this in case of emergency. Wink, wink. Hint, hint.
Fair enough.
So the murder castle actually was around for a while. With the death of the castle's caretaker, and
that's so funny that they say that wasn't true, because that's like what most people think of when they think of HH Holmes, is that murder castle and the different horror house type contraptions it had going on in it.
Yeah, it wasn't true. They said that apparently the caretaker did commit suicide. He said he just couldn't sleep because of all the hauntings of the things that had happened in there. And then in 1895, the castle itself was gutted by a fire. So that's when they went in. And then this is interesting too. Think about like Holmes's background. So according to a newspaper clipping of New York Times, 2 men were seen entering the back of the building between 8 to 9 p.m. About a half an hour later, they were exiting the building and ran away rapidly. And then there were several explosions and the castle went up in flames. Afterwards, investigators found an half-empty gas can underneath the back steps of the building. The building survived the fire and remained in use until it was torn down in 1938. It is currently occupied by the Inglewood branch of the United States Postal Office. So it's now a post.
That's why my mail was always late.
Yeah, right. Yeah, apparently it was just a normal building. It didn't have all the it had hidden rooms, but they weren't used for what we were told. I think one of the reasons that we have all these like scenarios or thoughts is because, you know, at the time, serial killing and that kind of stuff was not as talked about or shared. And I think people fictionized, is that the word? Fantasized or made it more fiction than it really was.
Yeah, I think what it was is that they heard about the horrible things that happened in there, and then they just thought about elaborate ways that it took place.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in 2017, there had been some allegations that Holmes actually escaped his execution, and that he really didn't die. So in 2017, his body was exhumed and tested. And then, which was actually really cool because due to his coffin being contained in cement, his body had not decomposed like a normal person. So his like clothes were almost perfectly preserved. His mustache was actually still intact. So I'll share a picture, but he has like a really cool little like pencil mustache. And so obviously his body was positively identified by his teeth that he was Holmes, and then he was reburied. Probably not again in cement. I assume that we don't really do that anymore because people don't really do grave robbing anymore. But yeah. So that is my story about HH Holmes. I do have our fun talk about him being Jack the Ripper, but I wanted to see if anybody wanted to add anything on before we get into that conversation.
So what were the ways that we know that he killed people? Because I've read stories about some of these. He could asphyxiate people in rooms. They were soundproof. He may not have gone in and gone hostile on them. But
yeah,
what ways do we know that he actually did? And also, what are some of the ways that people may have exaggerated? Because spill it. Let's hear it.
Yeah, great question. So from what we know is that he definitely killed the 2 girls by gas. So he probably killed some of his other victims that way. If that probably wasn't his first time, considering it was so precisely planned. Because he had a drugstore and a medical background, he knew how to poison people. Mm-hmm. So I think if we are to assume ways, he probably poisoned folks and then cut them up and burn their bodies in the glass bending machine. We also know that he had a lot of experience with surgery. So I imagine a lot of it came with drugs, knocking them out, and then killing them that way. I don't think it was as vicious as like watching people suffer and things like that. I think it was more of the power control of like taking their life and cutting their body, which actually is really common with a couple of some other serial killers. Who
Dahmer?
Dahmer is a good one. There was another one that was in New York who did that. I can't think of who he was. I just read about him the other day. But
Scranton Strangler?
Yes. But like that is really common. It's the idea, like the enjoyment of like taking apart the body. I think the interesting part, though, is that like Holmes really didn't have the background that like a lot of serial killers do have, in the sense of like coming from a home that is Christopher sleeping?
Are you talking about the Brooklyn serial killer, Amanda?
Yeah. Yes. What was his name, Ange?
Harvey Marcellin?
Yes.
Okay.
But I think one of the things he did have that we could say is pretty common with like Bundy and some others is he was really charismatic. And that's how we can tell with all the women he was getting, and then he would lure them back. Now, these weren't women who were like prostitutes or whatever, but these were women that he would say, oh, I need you to come do some work for me. And then he would kind of lead them on and then kill them. I'm actually really shocked that Mrs. Piesel, it wasn't one of his victims, based on just like how he led the whole family on. I don't know if there was like a reasoning to that. And I think it's interesting too that his 3 wives like had no idea, but they were not with him for a long time, if that makes sense. So I don't know if they caught on or if they were like, whatever. So yeah. I do think it's interesting that we have made him out to be a bigger monster than what may really... He's still definitely a monster, right? Not gonna lie there. But I think for him, it was more of... It started off like insurance claims and how to make money. He was definitely like a scammer. And then it went from that to like, oh, I can just dispose of these bodies once I'm done scamming them. So...
that's an interesting escalation of murder, or just doing bad things. Like, how do you go from that to that?
Yeah.
Especially if he didn't have, the typical traits of a serial killer or psychopath.
Yep. Yeah, I think, well, and, I think the interesting thing too is he had, he didn't also, there wasn't like, well, we don't know, because again, this is the 1800s, so research is different, but we don't know if there was also a sexual connection to this. Like, we don't know if he did things that were sexually impacted before, which is also really common with certain serial killers based on history and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, because that's the part I just finished reading in the book at the airport earlier was it Julia? Mm-hmm. And Pearl?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was, the statement in the book about how he was, had the rag over her face with the chloroform, and she was just like struggling, and he got slightly aroused by it. So could have been.
Yeah. And like I said, we don't actually have we don't have that knowledge like we have with other folks that are serial killers. So, so one of the fun thoughts that really comes up a lot with HH Holmes is that HH Holmes and Jack the Ripper are the same person. And Adam, we talked about this today when we were going to Costco, because we go to Costco like twice a week. And you asked me if it was on the same time, and I said no, that I thought Jack the Ripper was before, but I am wrong.
It's exactly at the same time.
Literally the same time. So one left a string of victims in the murky streets of London, and the other operated a sadistic house of horrors thousands of miles away in the United States. But could Jack the Ripper and H.H. Holmes have been the same person? So I'm going to tell you why I think. Yeah.
There's a whole documentary on this on History Channel. They went through as a relative of H.H. Holmes, apparently, and he was tracking down to see if he was Jack the Ripper, actually. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's actually where I got this from.
Nice.
So the initial overviews and the facts would say that we're probably dealing with radically different people, and not because they're like in two different areas, et cetera, but there's just a thought. So Jack the Ripper claimed most of their I say their victims because there's also thoughts that Jack the Ripper could have been a woman. So I just say their victims.
Yeah, that's something that came to light recently, isn't it? Where it could have been Jackie.
Yeah. And there's also talks that it could have been a royal. So it's an interesting, like, they just don't know. And it's so fascinating because it was over, 125 years ago or something. So, so Jack the Ripper took most of their victims on the streets, audaciously attacking women where they could, and they could have easily been caught in the act, where H.H. Holmes, by contrast, preferred to work in private, even going so far as building the murder castle, which he was able to secure victims, and like creeping out in public just didn't seem to be his style. But if we scratch beneath the surface, there are some more apparent parallels between the two. The Ripper, far from being savage, was not a messy slasher, as myth would tell us. They actually were a careful and calm killer. They didn't just like lunge at their victim with a knife. First, they would choke their victims, then lay them quietly down before commencing the evisceration. And they would do that so that no one in earshot would be alert of what was going on. So they were very, very methodical, all of that. Holmes, too, had a methodical killing style and was a trained medic, meaning he could adapt to removing organs, which was one of the things that was believed about Jack the Ripper, was that they had some type of medical degree. So, kind of an interesting parallel to that. It's also important to consider that the last of the official victims of Jack the Ripper was killed in her own bed rather than on the streets. And she wasn't just simply cut open. She was like obliterated by their blade. And this was like a huge escalation from the Ripper's like original killings, showing that like the style had evolved. And the theory is that this could have been Holmes trying to figure out different methods and moving towards a more grandiose style that he may have displayed in Chicago. Speaking of the United States, investigations revealed that Holmes left a trail of business documents, which allowed them to chart his movements. So what it showed is that except for between 1888 and 1889, there's a paper trail. But during that year, that paper trail goes completely quiet, which actually is the same time of the Ripper's killing in London. So Holmes could have been the person in London killing all of those women.
Didn't they also have his name on a shipping manifest as well?
Yep.
Or a name similar to his?
They have on a ship log that shows a passenger sailing from the UK to the US as H. Holmes. And it was shortly after the Ripon killings ended in London. So, kind of interesting coincidence. And then there are some linguistic experts who have analyzed the letter that Jack the Ripper sent to the London media called the Dear Boss letter. And they say that it has various quirks of language that suggest that the writer of the letter is an American. And so that is like another connection because, like Americans have a different kind of way we say things than the Brits. And they looked at the forensic sketch artist that was created of Jack based on witness testimony of 13 people who had seen the victims with a man before they died. And the results are a photo similar to that of H.H. Holmes. And I will post that also on Instagram. So what do you all think based on what I shared with you?
I definitely think he is Jack the Ripper as well. Definitely think so. I mean, the evidence kind of
I think there's a lot of evidence to support. Yep.
Certainly possible.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really interesting to show that we, were able to solve that experience. I think the other cool thing, or not cool, but interesting thing is, I wonder if Holmes was trying to escape and go, okay, I'm going to go to to London, because he already said that's where Pietzel was hiding, So maybe he was going to try to go to London to be Pietzel or whatever, and then couldn't fight the urge to kill. And that's sort of how we know that he knows how to like choke people and get them to be quiet before killing. We know that like his medical background allows for the similar killings as the Ripper. I mean, and like Angela said, that progression of killing, maybe he just got even more ballsy. So, yeah.
Well, that and maybe so. If all the killings in London with Jack the Ripper were outside, him actually having a murder castle was trying to hide any sort of evidence of that.
Yeah. And I think I think they can evolve, right? So he started off not really into the whole, like, I don't want to get away. I can't get away with this. I have to make sure no one can find out. To, hey, I've gotten away with this for years now. Or not years, but around a certain amount of time. Because when did this happen? Yeah, for like, actually, if we think about it, he did this before he started the Chicago killing, so maybe he just gotten better. Like you said, Ange, like he was like, okay, I was sloppy, now I'm going to get better at it. So.
Yeah, following the evolution of a killer for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because Jack the Ripper was 1888 to 1891.
Yeah.
The Fair was 1893. And you had said when he moved over, he moved around, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, even during when they were building the Fair, in the book, they referenced that Jack the Ripper was still at large and he killed someone else during this time. And I think that was 1891.
Yeah, they said that they have like a paper trail of like Holmes's movement, except for between 1888 and 1889. And then the ship passaging of him coming back was like right after the Ripper killings ended, which makes sense because he didn't start to build the castle until like 1893. So, yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, 1891. Sorry, that's when he started building the castle.
Yeah, because he wanted it to be done before the Fair, or in time for the Fair.
But
and the Fair took like a few years.
Like, a lot. And so he was always kind of on the go with business and like things he was doing. So not surprised by any of that. But yeah, I think he's an interesting character. I think that he definitely plays into a ton of American history and fableism. So
the Forrest Gump of serial killers.
Yeah.
He's everywhere. Well, I just found an article on British Heritage that they actually, and this is as of February 10th of this year, that they confirmed who Jack the Ripper's identity is.
Oh, who was it?
A Polish barber, a 23-year-old barber from Poland named Aaron Kosminski.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, I don't buy it. How come I never heard of that?
Yeah.
It just came out like 10 days ago.
How did they even like, I need to read more about this because I don't know if I believe it. Aaron Kosminski?
Yeah, Kosminski.
Huh.
Based on DNA evidence. But, I mean, you also have, Holmes could have been, and there's obviously a lot of evidence to support that. But what about, like, accounts of the physical traits? Like, do those line up instead of just, like, the dates and the jumping around?
So they did say that, like, that the person they said looked like the accounts that the people saw the man they saw the victims with beforehand did look like Holmes. But Holmes looked like every other white guy in 1890. So, like, yeah,
well,
but
one of the things that stands out that they really echo in the book is he had really piercing blue eyes. that made him stand out. Whereas, according to the Jack the Ripper article, he had brown eyes. So that's total opposite ends as far as eye color.
How were they able to see the eyes? Were they that close to him? Like when they gave identification?
Maybe.
Interesting.
I know.
What I really like is that some people thought it was like Prince Albert Victor, which was like one of the princes. I was like, yeah, let's blame the lizard people.
Yes.
So. Oh, Angel, I see Aaron Kaminsky, right?
Kosminski, yeah.
He was they're only blaming him because he was Jewish. That's exactly what it is.
You never know. He was. Well,
no. Yeah, they said they found DNA from him and one of the victims on a shawl.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe, I don't know. Interesting. Well, we'll have to hear what our listeners say and if they think, could it have been Holmes or could it have been Prince Albert Victor, Duke of Clarence and Avondale, or Lewis Carroll. I appreciated that one also was one of the ones that people said.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let us know your thoughts. But yeah, this is sort of just the introduction into like our serial killer little things, and just wanted to share him. So recommend to our listeners, definitely recommend the book Devil in the White City. It's really interesting, really good. Don't know how true it is. It's definitely like a nonfiction fiction book. And then we know that Leonardo DiCaprio, who only dates 25 and younger people, and Martin Scorsese are creating a Hulu special about this. They were supposed to do a movie. Apparently that got canceled, and now it's supposed to be a Hulu special. I have no idea the information on that, but I think it will be really exciting.
Hopefully it's better than the one that is currently on Hulu about it.
Oh, it's horrible. That one is like, if I made a movie.
I barely got 5 minutes in. I'm like, I can't watch this.
Yeah. I was like, based on my PowerPoint slide, this is the
It was definitely made by the Hallmark Channel.
It was worse. It was made by like...
Not even. It's like someone had their own phone, like an Apple iPhone. Yeah. Shots fired.
With some of that. Apparently, Keanu Reeves was supposed to be the lead in this. But I just read a story that he has pulled out.
He's too busy with John Wick.
I mean...
God, can't wait for that.
Me neither. Good on him.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting that this production's having such a hard time, like, being produced and, like, finding people to do everything. Because I feel like I've been waiting for this book to become a movie or a show for, like, 20 years now. Well, not that long. Maybe, like, 15 years. So I read this in 2012, so it was 11 years ago. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, recommend it. It's a great. I'll post information about the book too on Instagram. The author also, like I said, has another really good book called Eric Larson is the author, and then he's an American journalist, and he has another really awesome book called The Splendid and the Veil, which is really good, and then In the Garden of Beast, which is about
He's got a lot.
Yeah. In the Garden of Beast was really, really good. It tells a story about like the early sort of pre-World War II, like America's first ambassador to like Nazi Germany experience. And then the rising terror of that. So kind of an interesting take on how that all started out. He's a good writer.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us on this episode of the Waters Runs Deep podcast. I thank Adam for joining us as well. Good to have you again. Just a reminder, please rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. Check out our listener support and our Instagram. Give us a like, share a post. Get us out there. Build this community with us. And until next time.
Yeah. Bye, friends.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Hey y'all, Angela here with Season 2, Episode 4, HH Holmes fact-checking. To recap how many wives HH Holmes did have, there were a total of 3 that were documented. There was Clara Lovering, Murder Belknap, and Georgiana Yoke. I know on the episode, Amanda and I were going back and forth about the pronunciation of her name, and I was able to confirm it was Georgiana. Out of the 3 wives, only Murda was the one to bear his child, who was his second wife. Their daughter was Lucy Theodate Holmes. The Brooklyn serial killer, who was known for dismemberment, was Harvey Marcellin, that Amanda was referring to. And in the topic of conversation regarding the guillotine and the accuracy rate, it was in fact a very accurate machine that was able to kill, but there were times that were documented in which the guillotine was sabotaged. One of those, and the most famous case, was reported by Victor Hugo in the preface to the 1832 edition of his book, The Last Day of a Convict. That is all I had for this week. Check in with you next episode.